With that, the person and the reason we're all here today, Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee, I reached out to and said, hey, I've got this perfectly awful opportunity for you. How would you like to spend a lot of time and effort and get nothing in return other than acknowledgement for your expertise and being able to share some best practices? And as you can see from the picture, Lee's a pretty engaging person and a very likable person. So he, of course, smiled and said yes. And I do feel like I might have took advantage of him asking him to do it, but he was ready, willing, and able to lead this session. And I'm really excited for it. So Lee, thank you so much for volunteering to do today's session.
Yeah, thank you for the wonderful intro. And looking back into when you first asked me, I was like, oh, I don't know. But, Jay, you're such a good connector of the community and such a good networker that I have to help if I can. Like if you need information from me or anything from me, I'm glad to help out. You've done so much for the entire community. So let's give Jay and Frederickson a round of applause. Yeah, so my name is Engeswick. Oh, I'll bring up the presentation here quickly. And can you see it okay?
Yep.
Okay. So as Jay said, my presentation is going to be about how Radisson Hotel Group America has used Articulate Rise 360 to create a real quick, simple, yeah, I'm blushing. A real quick, simple scenario-based, I don't even want to call it training. It's more of an intervention. So it's really specific to hit one like specific problem that we were having and do it quickly. And my presentation. So again, my name is Lee Engeswick. I say if people were to ask me if people were to ask what my three biggest verbs would be, it'd be adaptable, accountable, affable. Those are things that I try to be in my professional and everyday life. I do have a website, 337 Creative. If you flip over 337, that's my name, my first name, Lee. So when we were first what we'll do is we'll introduce the characters, who our stakeholders are. These are the people that have either they are impacted or have vested interest in what this solution is. First, we'll start with the vendor guests. Those are the people that are coming to the hotels. They're guests. They are the client. So kind of to set the story, we have contracts with different companies, and these are the company employees that come out they do a job or something like that, and they need a place to stay for a couple days, a week, whatever it is. They're the people checking into the hotel and need rooms and need a place to sleep at night. Our hotel front desk associates, those are the people checking in. They're the ones asking questions. They're the one that connect to the guests every day. So we need them to be knowledgeable of what the process is. These guests don't come in every day, but if they do, they need to know, the front desk associates need to know how to handle it. The stakeholders are vendor client. That's the company that we're working with, that we have a contract with. I'm going to be non-specific about things just to be on the safe side for confidentiality. These are the people that this is the company that we're working with, that we have a contract with. So they're the ones writing the checks. And then our HG sales team, they are the ones receiving the checks and hopefully making sales and making money. So with that, we kind of set the stage of who we have. We had our sales team reach out and say, hey, we're really struggling with some of our sales front desk associates are struggling with the check-in process for one of our vendors. This vendor has three unique aspects to their reservation that weren't always being followed, which caused a disruption of the reservation. So it interrupted how people were checked in or could be checked in. And then the downflow of that is it really impacted when and how things were being paid out, which that's a big deal when things are, people can't check in, people can't get paid, everything, all that needs to be happen. So obviously it's a big deal. And we wanted to really help them with that process because that's some information that we can say, yep, this has a business impact, it's a high priority thing, let's jump on it, let's take a look. So with that, the sales team said training is the answer. Yes, let's do an hour. They want to do an hour long training to show the process. They want to show the history of the client, who the client is, the whole thing. I mean, they wanted the kitchen sink and everything. I know that chat has had this problem. Give me a thumbs up if you've had this issue. So with that, yep, training is always the answer. With that, I'm sure you've all had the same reaction I'm about to have. My reaction was, oop, did it go? Yes, that's me. Yeah, my reaction to that was, okay, so what's the problem? After we kind of gathered ourselves and said, what do we need to look at to the actual problem rather than doing a whole training, which can take weeks to create. It can take a long time, back and forth with that. It's always a struggle. So what we ended up doing was going back to the sales team and just chatting a little more about what the situation is and just let them tell their story, rather than pummeling them with questions about intake and KPIs and all this stuff. Like, just like, hey, how do you know this is an issue? Like, what's going on? If you were to name three things that were impacting this, like, what do you got? What we ended up with was three specific things to the process that are unique to this client in the contract that may not always be followed. These are the things that weren't being followed. These are the things that were the sales team were getting called about because they weren't getting paid and blah blah blah. And so we looked at booking needs to be made through the travel agency. So what that means is when the client's employees were out on a job doing something, they had to call ahead and say they had to call a specific travel agency that they work with and say, hey, I need a room for 3 days, I need a room for a week, or whatever that looks like. The vendor will not pay for walk-ins, so a guest can't, the client's guest can't, come in and say, hey, I need a room for the night. They do need to make that call to the travel agency to get it booked, or they need to pay out of pocket. And I don't know what that reimbursement looks like, but I from what I understand from the sales team, they would then not get paid, which they have to follow a client contract, but we won't get into that. And then, things like the client, the vendor client, the employee guest, they can't make manual changes. So if they're there for a week and they want to stay for the weekend, they have to either go back to the travel agency again, or they have to pay out of pocket to make a reservation. So really what this did was gave us a clear understanding of what the problem was and let us ideate on what we wanted to do for a solution. So knowing what we know now, what in the chat, what solutions would you look at to solve this? If you had all the information that I have right now, what would you do? I'll give you a couple minutes. I'd run and hide. Yeah.
I was pretty good too, Laura.
Dive under the desk and hope nobody noticed. Okay, so what we ended up doing was send out surveys. Yeah, that's a good thing. Ask more questions. Yeah, those are really good ideas to really get into the nitty gritty of what we were seeing. How we identified the problem was really with those being the calls and the lack of business. They had a pretty good idea of like what the problem was. So I didn't want to um spend a lot of time, even more time trying to get at it because we had a good idea of what the issue was and a pretty good path forward of what they wanted. So our team spent some time brainstorming and trying to think of any idea of that's not an hour-long training or a webinar that talks about this, just because we've got so much of those that's been done to death. And we had a specific problem that needed to be fixed. I can say in confidentiality that it was kind of a cover your butt thing. So they wanted to make sure that we were covered to say, yep, we were telling the hotel or front desk people what to do. But I wanted to be more specific. I wanted to get to, the hotel only needs to know these three things. And then why doing these three processes are super important and what that impact is to say like, hey, if you don't do these three things, you won't get paid and we need to get paid. So from there, we got an idea of what we wanted to do, and I'm gonna try to switch sharing, which can get tricky. Okay, and hopefully you can see my screen here.
We're still seeing the presentation, Lee.
Oh, I did this in practice too. There, thanks, Mark. And you can see my storyboard now.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So from there, we spent some time, creating an idea and doing a very quick storyboard. Really, all this does is align to what our objectives are that we created based off of those problems. The problems we identified ended up being our guides for our objectives. And we spent some time looking at, okay, we need to identify the key services and how this translates to business, identify or define the essential actions that need to be done, and then choose correct check-in actions just to give them some practice. And those are the things that were driving us forward. Yes. Mark noticed that I do have a placeholder. I was at some presentation that was talking about developing training and things like that, and they mentioned they put a monster truck in. So obviously that's amazing because it's very eye-catching. It's very like in your face. Oh, yep, I need content. So if I'm developing anything and I need content, I will put a placeholder with a monster truck just so if it gets sent to the subject matter experts, they know that content needs to be placed there. Like there's no doubt. So we continued on with our storyboarding. We talked about descriptions, kind of an overview of what we want to accomplish out of the training. And then we just we go through the objectives, and then just put in ideas like what we're going to talk about. Like this just is going to be putting the logos and talking about the services. And then we talk about RHGA, put a logo, talk about how we work with these crews in this company. And then really get to the point, like talk about our objective, like, what the 3 things that we want to change, the behavior change that we want to enact. And just come up with some ideas, whether it's a visual thing, a little interactivity, just get some ideas generating. This isn't supposed to be a guide of specifically what we're going to do, every word that we're going to put on the board. This is more an outline just to make sure that we're aligning our interactions with our objectives and making sure we get all the content and stay focused on what we're doing. And really, it's just click through stuff there. And then we just say scenarios. And then we just say, okay, we'll have a scenario where the property wants to make a reservation, wants to walk in without a reservation, and a scenario that they want to change the reservation, like, because those are the biggest problems that we had. And my focus with this is to keep it simple. We recognize that our hotel associates are super busy. A lot of employees and associates are. They're on the floor, they're doing calls, they're checking people in, they've got all sorts of stuff going on. We really want to drive in these 3 things very solidly. Does anybody have any questions so far? I want to make sure I'm not speeding through my content. Yeah, I would say, that's our next step. We're gonna talk about we'll get into Rise right now. I'll show you the overview of what the solution is that we created, and then I will walk through what our the development is, and we can show some options and things like that. Oh, thanks for the good pacing. I appreciate it. So yeah, let's continue. So this is Rise 360. It's pretty what you see is what you get. I divide all my courses into folders if I have multiple things going on. Okay, good. Thank you. So I try to organize my life as much as I can so I know where things are at. So this is my course that we're going to use for for a scenario. And you can just click into it. And hopefully Rise isn't being slow today. It's entirely web-based, so just be aware of that. You cannot get files, editable files onto your desktop, as far as I don't know. As far as I know, we have had issues with that in the past with other teams making something and then going missing, and then, well, not going missing, people won't go missing, and not being able to get that content back or things like that. And so it is something to be aware of. What people can do is they can send you a copy if you have. So I'm gonna pick on Anne because it's here in the chat. So if Anne has Rise 360 and she needs me to send her content so she can make changes, what I can do is send her. I can share a copy of that as long as she has a. Okay, I'll cover that. As long as I have a copy, I can send her it, but I can't download it on the computer to my hard drive and store it somewhere. It has to be tied to an account. So backing up a little bit, Rise 360 compared to Articulate, I will say the biggest difference is the way content is created and developed, like the mindset of it. Rise 360 is really good for content that if you need to develop something really quickly, and it doesn't have to have a lot of interactions. Say basically if you have things that are like a text dump, or hey, I need to get this out and it needs to be done this week. I can take a PowerPoint or some content, put it into Rise, and within a few hours have something that I can send to people and react to. There's no messing with triggers and anything, timelines. There's no timelines on this thing. Like, it's basically like, I would call it building a web page. It's kind of like if you've ever used, yeah, no problem. If you've ever used like, yes, that's a great call out, Anne, or Judy, sorry. That's a great call out. That Articulate is the company, and they have Rise, and they have Storyline, and they have a whole suite of things. So Storyline will give you more control, more content. Rise is more what you see is what you get editing. We can, and I'll jump into this. You can do things like, here's your title. You can just type it in, copy and paste the description, and this will be what it shows. I'll show you. Do you want to see the preview first of what we've done, or do you want me to get into the guts and talk about editing? Preview? Okay. I think that's a good place to start. So this is the solution that I actually built. And it's very simple. It's very clean. It's very fast. So if you'll see right here, here's the title that was in the last screen and the description. And then every time you create like a module, and you'll see more of this as we go into the editing stuff, you'll create like sections, and each of those sections I try to align with, like, if it's an intro and then like different topics. And they will automatically populate in this is like your menu. But if you start, you can edit this background. So if you want to do, something related to the content you've got going on, it's just an image. You'll see our placeholder again for content scrubbing. And this is the introduction. So this is basically taken right out of that storyboard. And this is the company name, kind of a little description of what they do. I really like breaking things out into chunks. So clicking through, and then it talks about our company, Radisson, and then kind of that relationship of, how these two are connected. And that's it. Like, that's the content for the introduction. And then it jumps in, you click next. We're already like cruising through this. I want to make sure it's pretty straightforward for people to take. We've got the title again of the next section, and really you click on the card for more details. And then it talks about centralized billing, walk-ins, and changes. I want to be very specific. And then it clicks, and you can scroll and look. I would say for the most part, I like this interaction. I don't like having a lot of text here, because then it's scrolling and then it just gets confusing. And I don't want people to miss things. So if we can shorten as much of the content we can, and there's other options that you can use based on what kind of content you have and what kind of interactions you want. When you create the sanitized version, were you able to easily copy yes, that's one thing that Rise does very well. You can just go in editing, and I can show you that, and it just says copy course, and all it does is make a duplicate of the course, and you can change whatever you want. I went through and removed all the references and videos and stuff like that, and it's perfect. Great question. Is this an interaction? Yes. So these are a lot like building a website, and and like any of those web development, like WordPress or anything like that, it's blocks of things. So you can add and move things around, and it's really simple. There's options to add things, but there's not a ton of options. So that's something to keep in mind. Like this is our scenarios. When we were talking about the scenarios, this is it. We serve it up as a kind of a case study, and then the user can go and look and interact and click the buttons and read more about why it needs to be done a certain way and how. And it's really simple, really clean, really fast. And then you scroll down to the next one, and you talk about, again, we're talking about the extending the stay, and kind of the reasons why you don't want to do that. So, and then from there, it's just resources for more information. And then from there, it's conclusion. Yes, yeah, that was a hotspot interaction. Yes. So I'll scroll back a little bit. This interaction is a flip card interaction and built into Rise. You can add cards and move cards and stuff like that. Was the lobby you showed something your team photographed? So yes, so this is kind of a workaround. That's a good question, Judy. I was thinking that the other day too. Yeah, so what this background was, it was a static stock photo that we had of one of our hotels. And then what I did is I brought that into probably Storyline, and then added this the avatar, our person here, or people, and then exported those into JPEGs, and then put the JPEGs in. It's a little bit of a mess around just because I also didn't like the stock options in Storyline, so we kind of did like a hybrid. And then with the conclusion, I always want to say you're done. You can close, just to leave out any question for the user if they're done or what they can do. Because sometimes it like, this is the preview, so this is what the action would look like if that wasn't there. If it just stopped at resources, a user wouldn't know what to do. And you're like, well, am I done? Is there more? So I make a point to add a conclusion and tell them specifically that you can close. Rise and Storyline does a pretty good job of remembering where you are with things. So if people walk away from it or they close and come back, it should remember where you're at the sections, and not, if anything, at the sections, and not necessarily all of the interactions. So my best tip for here would be, try not to have a lot of content in each section, because if somebody walks away and comes back, interactions and stuff might not track fully. But if they go through each of these sections, then it will track. That's my experience. Yep. We actually, that's we actually have another one that's a checklist, which is great because we can put it online and people can interact it and we can update it. But it does have problems, like, because it's a checklist of a laundry list of stuff. Like if they leave a section and come back, they're like, well, all my progress isn't saved. Well, I mean, they're just checks. So if you've done it, you can just check through and do the section again. But it's a user issue. So like it's a problem with the user experience. So just be aware of that if you're doing things like checklists or something like that. To get into more of the content in the building, I like with the interactions, you can lock it down and have, yep. Yeah, and I really try to, and it's not so much that my opinion is very much that I don't want to lock down navigation because I'd like people moving around and doing stuff. And if you know, want to look at something specific, you don't need to go through like 10 pages of content if you really need one thing out of one section. So, but I will put in some interactions that will have the user stop and slow down a little bit, but they aren't locked. So yeah, we'll get into, let's get into kind of the building of it. And this is the fun part. So really, as you can see, these are all like blocks of things. So you can select different options. A lot of times I use this text, image and text, which that's we're using for our logo and the description. Use that several times. You can have images on top of text. I will say it, it it gets a little tricky with images because everything here is responsive. So if you want certain things to be in an image and it always needs to be an image, you're going to have to experiment with that a little bit, because I know we've had screenshots and stuff, and when they get put into an image and like it gets responsive or something, like it might cut off logos or something like that. So if you have brand things that you need to consider, I would look at it and then try to experiment of like, okay, how do you fit it in better? One complaint that I do have is there isn't very good, or as far as that I've seen, and if you've seen it, please let me know, because I would love this, like requirements of like size requirements, so I can give to like content and branding people to say, hey, you need to give me this size ratio to make sure that all the logos are in this spot, so it's always in there. Yep. Okay. No, that's good. That's a good main content in the center of the image. Yep. That's probably the best advice, and that's what we found too. I've had to actually go in and make a resize and try to like tweak images a little bit, just to get everything to fit. There's tons of images and text things here. A lot to continue, and you can move things around. So if you want all these grouped up, but you want this continue to be somewhere, it's just like WordPress, where you just move it around if you have experience with WordPress. Yep. Image size requirements are huge, and I wish they had them. It makes me sad. If we want to, at any point, if you're like, oh, we should add this content or something like that, you just click the plus sign, and then these are all your options. These are all the options for anything that you want to do. You can't add things. So if Rise decide articulate, yes, yep, we can add a quiz, and we can do that. We'll do that today, actually. So if you want to do like statements, you get a preview of what those look like. Quotes, any sort of lists, different image things. Lots of image things, galleries, if you have galleries of stuff. Oh, that's good to know. Thank you. If you add no process at the end of an image file, just before the extension, the Rise won't compress it. So that's actually really sharp, because then I have noticed that things get blurry. So I'm going to put that in my back pocket. Multimedia. So if you want to add audio and video, either from an MP4 or whatever, or like from YouTube or something like that, you can pop it in. Here's what that looks like. Here's a Vimeo. You can hit edit, put in your content here, change, put in your URL, and it will pull it. It doesn't download it or anything like that. You're asking about knowledge checks. Yep, you can do if you want to do just like a knowledge check within a section. You can totally do like a multiple choice thing or fill in blank and just add up on these, and these will add right to the section. There also is a opportunity to make like an actual like graded quiz, and we can look at that as well. So checklists, things like that. So if you want to add your question and your selections and any responses or feedback, totally do that. It's all pretty plug and play, or if you want to remove it. Let's see, I'll show those practice scenarios, which is just a hotspot interaction, which totally usable. I forget why we decided to do this solution rather than what Judy was talking about. Can assessments be added? We can, as far as what, and like, do you want a quiz at the end or in the middle of a training?
Yeah, I was thinking at the end. Lee.
Oh, yeah. And I'll show you that. Yep. So if you have, so I think Judy was talking about the scenario card, or whatever you call it. So yeah, you can totally do that. It's another way of doing that. We could have added our your little background here, explain what was going on, and then you can go through and say, okay, here's the feedback that you want to use. Here's your question. Here's how you would respond, like if you want to do multiple responses, things like that, and then it'll give you feedback to say, yep, nope, close enough. There's a couple different ones, so you can add like in the scenario if they're thinking. So if you make a selection and it's wrong, the feedback you want it. I think there's angry. We can make an angry response. Let's see if that comes up. Oh, all right, that's good feedback. Cool. Try that again. Continue. Will they get angry? Yep. See, now they're angry. So it's a good way to get like, you can ask questions and make decisions and then get really good both visual and textual feedback, and you can say like, hey, no, this is wrong. What we wanted to do with this, the hotspot, is just have them explore reasons why they need to follow the process and why, what you should do. I definitely would explore this a little more just because it's more branching. You could do, probably shouldn't say it's branching, but you can have more things happen. Yep. You can change the character. You can hide the character. I think I haven't spent a ton of time on this, but I'm pretty sure you can change the character, who the character is. I think there's some options here. Oh, yep. So in the scene, the actual scene setup, you can edit the character, and they have a list of tons of, or quite a few characters here. And then if you need to change the background, it'll go through their content library. This again is kind of tricky because some of them are not great. You can add different scenes. Yeah. If you add additional scenes, each scene can add, yep, you can have different characters. So you want to do a different scene. Yeah, I can totally do. Can you add that right now? New content. Yep. Yeah, new content. Add a scene. Yep. So we could have done like that. We could have had one scene be the check-in, and then the next scene be the extended. That's a good way to do it. I probably would explore with that a little more, just because you get that really good contextual feedback. Let's see what else. The conclusion and resources, those are pretty straightforward. They're it's just a paragraph, and then you can add like a web link or something like that, a hyperlink, and or add, I think it's multimedia or interactive, and do like a button. Like if you want them to download something, you can just have a location, add a button, and then have it do an action, either send an email, a link to something, things like that. Or if, let's see, oh, no, too far back. Back to our, see, I have a lot of courses, so that's why I like to break things up into this menu. They don't want to get lost. So if we did want to, I have trouble with the imaging be too large on this for the screen. In other words, you only see part of it. Yes. That's all I do. That's all I do is try to experiment to see where things fit. Because I have had that same complaint and issue. I don't know if there's like sometimes what'll happen is you'll have, it's a good, like if we look at this preview, like this portion, you'll have like a larger image or something like that, like or different aspect ratio, and it'll cut off just like this part, and you can't like, I don't think you can like move it and align it, or at least I haven't been able to. So then I end up going and trying to adjust things on my own. Can you keep the window on the left visible all the time, or does it always collapse? Let's see, take a look at our settings, navigation, sidebar. You can keep it either, this just says open, closed, or no sidebar. So if you want to have it open all the time, you can do that. Or if you want learners to click it open, then they can expand and contract this. This will be open. Or if you don't want them to use the sidebar at all, you can just hide it. So we can totally do that. Preview. Then it's closed. And how do you get to it? Oh. Yep, and then it'll become a little hamburger menu. You can open and close. What's nice about this is you get pretty fast for development. You can really go in and say, oh, I want to make these changes, and then like it's right there, and you can preview it right away. It's the trade-off because you don't have all the options, but you have a lot of quick development. So if we want to add a quiz, say the client said, oh, we need to have a quiz to make sure that, everybody knows what they're doing. So you can just add it, say add quiz, we'll add content, and then just select quiz. And what this does is this will start, if you want to do a multiple choice, it gives you a couple to start off. And you can really look at, different options if you don't like this one, or, replace it with something else. You have your options here. If you want to do multiple choice, multiple response, fill in the blank, matching, or draw from a question bank. I kind of wish they had one that was just true false. I mean, you could do it with the multiple choice. I understand like why that makes sense, but to me, I feel like they should just have one that automatically filled in. And from there, once you have your all your quiz questions set up and ready to go, you can preview it right away. This is what it looks like. This is our quiz. If you want to say, oh, what does this look like on tablet? Click on the tablet, it'll show you. Click on mobile, it'll show you. And then if you go back to settings, this will be our quiz settings. So pass, fail. And then, include this in the lesson count. So if you don't want this counted as a lesson, you can do that. Number of tries, pretty straightforward stuff. Randomize, and then reveal answer. And then I believe in the settings, there is I forget where this sits. Some of this stuff gets hidden and I can never remember until I poke around a little bit. I'm looking for where to put, where you identify. No, that was in the quiz stuff. We did see that. Where I identify the pass, fail, and the results. So if we were to look at the preview now, what would that look like? Start. Go through. Look through quick. And you can see everything that we've added is already here and ready to go. See, and then it adds rather than, I would move these around, but you can add the quiz. There's your quiz. Oh my gosh, I didn't even look at what the answers were. Yes. Yep, I will share my contact information. Oh, which I should probably get moving. Does anybody have any other questions about Rise or kind of like how we decided to make the decisions that we did so far? Okay. So going back to our scenario, we built this out. And then once I was done, this probably took me a day of development. We had a pretty good idea of what the content we wanted to use. I started playing with stuff. I had to make some graphics that were unique. Like you can't have. Can you use Rise to train? That's a good question. I probably wouldn't, just because. So the question is, can you use Rise to train usage of desktop applications? So like, yeah, you could do the button stack. I probably would still use Storyline just because you can have those good. Okay. Yep. The answer is Rise. Okay. Yeah, that's a good way. That's another thing you can do is you can embed Storyline right into Rise. So if you have a Storyline file, it'll pop up. You can add it here. It does need to be added through Review 360. So just keep that in mind. You have to manage another spot for things to be at. So don't go through and clean up all of your Review 360. So from there, we got to a place that we thought it was good internally, and then we wanted to share it for our subject matter experts to review and make comments. And so you do that through Review 360. You can just upload it right there. You can give them the link and they can make comments. I won't get into that because it gets pretty deep. And then, so I'm going to switch back to our presentation and take a look. These are just screenshots I had back up in case something went wrong. What was the result? We ended up getting about 2 months after we implemented it into our learning management system. We got feedback from our sales team that said, hey, this is actually working. We've received less calls and had to do less interventions on our side for the sales to get paid. So, we take that as a win if we can ever get feedback of things that we've done that have been successful and what those actual KPIs are. That's fantastic. So we say, yay, we celebrate. We celebrate our wins anywhere we can. Any other questions as far as that I can answer that you have for me? Or looks like you have a lot of great experts of Rise right here. So yeah, it's a great community. You can reach me at how to connect. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter. My website, my email is lee.engeswick@gmail.com, or just anywhere on social media, Lee Engeswick. All right, thanks. It was great meeting you. That's it for me, unless anybody has any other questions.
We've only got a couple of minutes. Can we
Okay.
thank Lee either through claps or through coming off mute to say thank you, or chat? I'm seeing lots of thank yous.
Cool.
Even an awesome.
Oh, good. I'll take that. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Lee, for sharing your expertise and knowledge with us. Thank you, everyone, for spending their lunch hour with us, and the Articulate community. Loved all of the questions. And like Lee said,
Yeah.
there's a number of people who participate regularly who have just a ton of experience and are always willing to share and guide people. So thank you to everyone for spending your lunch hour with us and joining us for the Twin Cities Articulate user group. We hope to see you at the next session, which will be within the next quarter. So more on that to come.